Hi, I'm Leah Louise from Inspired Quilting by Leah Louise. I'm so glad you're here with me today. I want to show you this pair of beautiful holiday quilts behind me. These are perfect for Christmas, for New Year's, for any kind of a holiday theme that you want to go with, whatever fabrics that you love. And it's all charm squares. And I use my fat quarters, I cut them into charms, then I put a little bit of sashing around those blocks, and look at how beautiful they turn out. It's a really easy quilt and it's fun to put together. You can do it in multiple sizes. This one, the blue and sort of a silvery white, is a large lap size quilt, and the burgundy and green is more of a small lap or even a baby size. You can do it with a single charm pack. And what's nice if you're thinking about gift giving, if you know anybody or have someone in your life who is chair bound or uses a wheelchair, think about making a little baby quilt for them to use in their chair, because that 36 to 40-inch width is perfect to have in your lap, yet not hang over and get caught up in the wheels. And I've made a couple for that purpose intentionally. And actually, I'll add a link below so you can see that, because there's some special pockets you can put in there. But quilts are so versatile, and especially when you're talking about Christmas quilts and gift giving and some wonderful ideas, I think this is perfect. So let me show you how to put this together. It'll go quicker than you think. Come on, let's quilt. This is a collection of green and burgundy batik fabrics. Primarily I'll fat quarters a few smaller pieces here, and my intent is to create a Christmas quilt. And I want to use charm squares, and I'm going to make this quilt the size for a single charm pack, so it'll be 42 blocks. But in addition to the charm square, there's also going to be a partial border around each block, and I'm thinking I'm going to use these burgundy colors, either all of them, one of them I haven't quite decided. But the first thing I want to do is get a collection of the fat quarters that I like that fit the color scheme that I want to use. And when I come across something and I know I'm kind of pulling colors together, I'll just throw them together in a group, and when I'm ready to make the quilt, I'll decide what stays and what goes. And in this particular case, like I said, it's the greens and it's the burgundies. Now, as much as I like the dots, this immediately is going to go, because it's terracotta and sort of a goldish green, which isn't going to work. And I don't want this same resin color, but it doesn't have a pattern. I want these blocks, because they're going to be 5 inches, to have a pattern on them, because they're going to be pretty visible. Again, too much gold. Actually, this little group, if this were greener, I would go with it, but it's got a bit of the light burgundy and the yellow, which I think would be pretty, but I just don't think there's enough color there. This has, it's blue, it's purple, it just wasn't quite what I want. Now this I might be able to work. I don't know. I don't know if that's too orange. I'll have to see as I go through. So I'm liking that. I like this. It's got some burgundy. It's got kind of some blue in there. We'll see where I think about that. Again, the green and burgundy is good. I don't know. This is more green and blue. We'll have to see, because I'm looking at some greens over here. So I'll hold that aside and see where it fits. So let's just kind of move through this pile. There's an iffy one. I definitely like this. We've got the darker greens and the burgundies, and the gold is kind of fun. That's going to give us, and I say golden color, it's not metallic. This definitely has some little metallic designs, some star patterns on it. But I like this. Again, this works well. We've got the burgundy almost into some fuchsia with the green. And of course my dots, I like that. It's a little on the purpley burgundy side, but that's okay. The color, it still works really well. And here we have some green and burgundy. Now this is actually a metallic, and I don't want to use the metallic on the front, so I am probably going to use the back side of the fabric that doesn't have the metallic. I don't know. We'll decide as I'm going along. I don't know if there'll be other metallics. I don't generally want to use just one metallic because it stands out too much. So I'll kind of go with that. It's a bit purpley blue in spots, but it has the burgundy and the green, so I'm good with that. This too, it's on the lighter side, but it's got the golds, and I think that'll be a good one. I like this pattern. It has a lot of different, what do I want to say, organic shapes. And that bit of yellow I think could be fun because there's a lot of this lighter, almost a yellowy kind of, I say yellow, creamy, I'm not sure what we call that color, but it has a yellow tint to it. And then we have the gold circles here. And so I'm thinking this will work. Now, let's see. This one, these colors are okay. That's a little on the terracotta side than burgundy. It's got a bit too much orange, but it doesn't have a pattern. And again, I want some design in there. Now this I like. It's a darker green with the all over pattern, and it's a bit a purpley burgundy, but it's got some good colors, and I like the dark green. That'll give some good contrast in there. And here's some bright green. I like this a lot too with the little teardrop leaf pattern. Butterflies. I don't know that butterflies work in a holiday. Ooh, that's awfully bright and yellow and orange and pink. And I like these multicolors, but that one's not going to work here. These are some good colors, but there's no pattern. I don't want to go with just like the modeled kind of a look. This is a great one. Look at that's a nice contrast compared to these others. And it's a very dark green background, but over on this side it has some dark burgundy. So that's kind of fun with this golden color. So that golden color kind of comes out in a number of these blocks, which is good. And then this is just a really neat leaf print. I got a couple pieces here. And that one has some burgundy in it. This has some blue, so we'll see if I use both or not. So I pretty much like these. This kind of works in there. So I might go with that as well. The colors all kind of blend good, and I like how they fit. This is still kind of a funny one. I'm not sure. I haven't decided if I can cut some see it's blue. I think right now I'm going to say no. That just kind of isn't working for me. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, so roughly 13 pieces. Now a charm pack will have 42 squares. One fat quarter will give you 12 charms. So if I want 42 squares and let's say I use a dozen charms, I'm going to have roughly, I can get 36, 45. If I cut 4 per fat quarter, I'm going to have 48, which will be more than enough. And so that's what I'm probably going to do is I'll go through and I'll cut 4 of each. It'll give me a few extra to work with. And again, when I get to the end of my quilt, I want to have a few blocks to choose from. I don't want to just have one and then have to use that because it may not work. It may be too much of one color. It may be a duplicate. So rather than deal with that, and with enough quilting, I know that happens, I just make extra as I go, and that's okay. It goes into the pile, and then that becomes something else on another day. Now, the way this pattern is going to work is I'm going to have 5-inch charms, but there's going to be a 1.5-inch border on each side. It will actually finish at 1 inch. And the border on each charm, let's say this is a charm square, is going to go along one side and down the other. So there'll be a 1.5-inch wide strip by 5 inches. And because that block is now longer, it's 6 inches long, I'm going to need a 1.5 by 6. And I'm going to need another 2 or 3 fat quarters for that border. And I was trying to decide, this is the color I want the border, so it's going to really bring out those burgundy colors in all the fabrics, which is why I didn't want to get into those orangey terracottas, because they're really not going to go well with this blend of fabric. But what I'm not sure I want to do is mix all these together or just go with one. Oh, look, here's some more. What do I have here? Oh yeah, these were orange. Yeah, these are definitely not going to work. Just never know what you're going to find underneath a fat quarter, right? You get a pile of them, it could be anything in there. But I like this because it's particularly dark. I'll get some pieces in there. And I think that's going to really stand out well against all these colors and create a nice border between all the pieces. So this will sort of become the dark background, and that'll allow each of these to brighten up a little bit and stand on their own. So here's the next step. What we're going to do is cut our 45 to 48 5-inch squares. And if you have a charm pack, that'll be fine. You can go ahead and use that and make that work. You have enough variety in a charm pack that you shouldn't have a problem when you get to the end of your quilt that you're duplicating too many blocks. And then get yourself a couple, 2 or 3 fat quarters. It depends on how you cut and how frugal you are. You can probably get away with 2 fat quarters if you're using one color. But if you want to use multiple colors, use at least 3. Don't just use 2. You want to use odd numbers because you're going to get a better balance rather than just having 2, because it almost looks alternating like a checkerboard, and we don't want to go there. Because then that becomes too much of a design element, detracts from everything else. But this is the same fabric. These are just too red. I don't want to do that. I really like this darker color so much better against these. So this is where we're going. Get the 5-inch cut, get the strips cut, and again we need 42 of each size, a 1.5 by 5 and a 1.5 by 6. And then we're ready to go. I'll show you how to put the blocks together and we'll get started on this quilt. I've got my charms cut. I did just want to show you real quick how I cut these from a fat quarter, because I wanted 4 from each fat quarter. I had, I think 12 or 13 is where I ended. But what I did is I cut a 5-inch by the width of fat quarter from the selvage to the cut edge. So we went from the selvage to the cut edge, and that's roughly 21 inches. And I just stacked a few of the fat quarters on top of each other, so 5 inches by 20, and I cut them every 5 inches to get my squares, and I end up with, various size end pieces depending on the actual width of the fabric. And so I just kind of tuck this up here, and I can have a look at the different fabrics and see how they all work together and what I like, what I don't like. And so far, everything that I see here, I'm going to hold this aside so I can put sort of well, I guess I'll put that there. I like to kind of alternate the colors a little bit. And but I really like how this is coming together. These colors look very nice. They work great together, and it just kind of creates a nice blend of colors that I'm looking for. Like I said, primarily green and burgundy. And then I have my 1.5 by 6 and my 1.5 by 5. So for each block, I'm going to chain stitch. I'm just going to start at the beginning of the pile, and I'm going to go through every one of them and sew the 5-inch by 1.5 inch to each side. And then I'm going to press it to the border. To the, well, that's essentially what this is. I call it a sashing, but it only is on 2 sides, so I don't know. Is that officially a sashing? I think I'm going to call it a sashing. And so all 42, in my case, I think I have 45 or 6. I'm not even sure, but I know I have plenty. And I'm going to sew the whole group of them. I'll press them. Then, once this is all sewn and ready, I'll take the longer piece and do the same thing on this side. But we're only doing 2 sides of the block. And once you see the finished quilt, you'll see how that's going to play out. It's going to keep everything just a little bit off kilter, and it kind of creates a fun look, and it makes it look a lot more complicated than it actually is to make. So here we go. I like these fabrics. Now, if you wanted to make a larger quilt, you can definitely do this with 3 charms or 2 or 3 charms and get a nice lap size, a large lap size. So this pattern is very, very flexible. I'm going with a single charm just because that's going to be quick and easy to teach this, and because that's all the fabric I had for this border. Now, had I chosen to use some of the other colors in here, I might have been able to do more, but this is kind of where I am right now, and that's what I'm going to go with. So I will probably do a border around the quilt, a narrow border, and then a wider border just to make it a little bit bigger. But I think this is going to be great. I love the colors. I think this is going to look terrific. So once you get all your pieces cut like this, get your strips cut, sew the 5-inch on, then sew the 6-inch, get everything pressed, and I'm going to show you how we're putting this quilt together. You know, we're probably going to use a 4-patch. That the way this pattern lays out, it's not exactly the same in every row. And if you do a 4-patch, then you don't have to count and make sure you're doing it correctly because the 4-patch does the work for you. So I'll be showing you that in the next step. With all the blocks sewn together with the sashing along 2 sides, we want to now set up the 4-patch. And I have 12 fabrics, 6 that are mostly the burgundy and 6 that are mostly the green. And I want to put them each into 2 piles of burgundy, 2 of green, in order to do my my 4-patch. So what I'm going to do is put these in the most similar stacks. So these tend to have a little more blue to their green color, and these are more of the chartreuse. So I'm going to have these. Then up here, I'm going to put the, let's see, the most burgundy. These have a lot of greens. Let's put this one just for a little difference. And we'll put these 3 together. Just put this one on top. Now, the way we're going to do our 4-patch is the first block in your top corner is going to be with the, what are we calling this? Our sashing corner down. The second block is going to be the green with the corner going up like this. Now we're going to keep the green down here, but we don't want 2 sashings together. See how this is now bordering this? This finishes off this edge, and now we're going to move this one right in here. What we're going to create are 4-patch blocks in this order. The reason being is we want 2 opposing burgundies, 2 opposing greens. So for me, again, this is my 4-patch. I love using this to put patterns together that require a block being turned within the row, just like we did on the rail fences. Anything that has an alternating pattern generally can be made into a 4-patch block. And then once all these 4-patch blocks are made, then the quilt goes together simply. I just start grabbing them off the top. Now, one thing I am going to do is I don't want to repeat these with 4 of the same. So I'm just sort of mixing it up a little bit. So as you're going, just make sure you're not doubling up. What we do next now is we're going to put the top 2 and the bottom 2 pairs together. So go ahead and sew these 2 together with a 1/4-inch seam like that, and then chain stitch and do the next one. So as you're chain stitching, make sure these blocks or these colors aren't repeating within the same block. Let's go ahead and get that done, and then I'm going to show you how we're going to finish this block. With a beautiful group of 4-patch blocks, we are ready to put a quilt together. But let's take a look at a couple things first. I just want to show you why dividing these into different piles is important, particularly because this pile of green, which is the same here and here, are all different greens that are in this block. And the reason that's important is we know these are not going to match. These are different greens. Remember, these were the blue greens and these were the more chartreusey, lime, brighter greens. And when putting these together, if we had exactly the same kind of colors next to each other, they're going to really stand out, particularly if we had something like this, because that's a pretty dominant print. And if you have too many of those side by side, then you're going to have, points in your quilt that are really standing out more than the rest, and that's not part of what the design is here. We want everything to blend together nicely, look across the quilt, see some fun prints, but not one group of them just stand out, over here in the left corner somewhere going, whoa, look at me. So what we do instead is we space everything out nicely, we put it together, and I did use a total of 48 of these blocks with sashing. And what I did is create 12 4 patches. Now that means my quilt is going to be 6 blocks across, because we have 2, 4, 6. Excuse me, it's going to be 3 4 patches wide, which is equal to 6 blocks. And for the length of it, I'm going to have 4 4 patches, which is going to be 8 blocks. Now, if you did go ahead and use a charm pack, you're only going to have 42. And that means you're going to make 6 of these blocks out of 36 of your squares. And that means then you're also going to have an extra 6 of these left over. So because they won't fit into a 4 patch when you have an odd number of blocks, what we want to do then is bring those single ones in and just add a single row. Remember, these alternate, so this row is going to follow this row here. And what we're going to do is, see where we have the corner here, then we have the corner here, and it'd probably be easiest to sew this whole row together and then add it to your quilt once the 4 patches are sewn together. So it's easy enough to add that extra row. I just chose to go ahead and use the 48 because I had the fabric, because I had enough of the blocks already pieced, and the numbers worked. So this is where I'm at, and I'm going to go ahead and put these together. It's very easy to do. We just want to make sure that as we're putting these, we don't put the same ones side by side. We want to use something a little different and mix it up so that the colors are spread out throughout the quilt. And that's all there is to it. We're just going to take these, sew it this way, going to put 3 blocks together, and then we'll do it again. And chain piecing is probably going to be the easiest way here as well. So I would go ahead and sew this 1/4 inch seam right there, and I would do all 4 pairs, and then I come back and do the 3rd row and then do the cross seam here, and we're finished. That's all it takes. So this goes together really well, and you can see how this pattern lays out, that this 4 patch is going to save you a lot of headache, because as you're going along, if you have to go back and see which way do these corners go, for me that's difficult. For me that's problematic because I'm more apt to make a mistake, and the 4 patch just makes it so much easier for me. So there you go. Let's go ahead and do this. Let's get ready to quilt, and we'll have a beautiful quilt before you know it. This is going to go together very quickly. Let's get started. Here's our finished quilt, and it looks fabulous. Those magenta burgundy sashings just bring out those colors so well and create a great contrast throughout the quilt with a fun block pattern that just follows along almost diagonally. And the way it offsets those blocks makes it look like a far more complex pattern than it really is. So I hope you enjoy making this. It's a beautiful quilt, and it can be done in so many different ways. Now this is a Christmas themed quilt, but it can be made in any fabrics, and it is a perfect size for a baby quilt. So I hope you enjoy making it. I just want to show one more quick picture. And just look at how these colors pop out, and they're so bright and beautiful and go together great. Oh, I love this quilt. I hope you have fun making it. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time.